Look, if you're watching this video, you probably already figured something is off. Something about the way we were taught is just off. The way our kids are being taught, the way the system is set up, it just doesn't sit right with you. Yet you just can't put a finger on exactly why that is. You just know. In this video, I'm going to share 6 books with you that put the words to that feeling. I knew my experience growing up was wrong. I knew there was something wrong with the game. I knew it. I didn't know exactly why. I couldn't put it into words as a kid and explain to people why I was suffering so much. But these books put the words into my mouth. And when I read them, it was like honey for the soul because I felt like someone out there actually got it. They understood what I felt. They understood my experience. And these books changed how I homeschool, but they didn't just change how I homeschool. They changed how I see myself as a parent, as a man, and how I see the world. So let's get into it. So book number 1 is Weapons of Mass Instruction by John Taylor Gatto. You might have heard of that book before. You might have heard of him. In the homeschool world, he's a big name. And to be honest, I've spoken to some teacher friends of mine, and they all had heard of him. They read some of his work, and they like him, and they try to allow his work to influence them in the classroom. I promise you this, though. Some of the books that are going to be on this list, you will not have heard of. But I wanted to start here because this book answers the question that every homeschooling parent has when they get started. And that's, why does the system feel so wrong? Why does it feel like it's working against our kids and not for them? Gatto answers the question, and in some ways his answer is a little bit uncomfortable. He spent 30 years as a New York City public school teacher. He won New York City Teacher of the Year 3 times, and then he quit. He said he was no longer willing to hurt children anymore. Now, let that sit with you for a second, because we're talking about a man who was so devoted to this career. He was so moved to become a teacher that he was so exceptional at it that he won awards for being the best at his job. He bought in. He believed in the cause. And yet here this man, after all those years of doing it, had this awakening, this road to Damascus moment where he said, I'm hurting kids. This thing hurts kids. Years ago, someone handed me his book, John Taylor Gatto's book called Dumbing Us Down. And then shortly after that, they handed me his book called The Underground History of American Education. What I love about Weapons of Mass Instruction, however, is that it's a fusion of the 2 books. I found Dumbing Us Down to be really just unorganized because it was just a collection of his speeches. So there's a lot of redundancies in the book. Underground History, I found that one to be overwhelming, sloppily put together, and a lot of information. A lot that I felt like I didn't even really need to know. But Weapons of Mass Instruction takes the best of both and puts it into one book. Is it perfect? No. Is it eye-opening? You betcha. And here's what Gatto lays out in the book. And if you're anything like me, it makes your blood boil a little bit. And that's that the American education system was never really designed to educate your kids at all. It was modeled after the 19th century Prussian model, the way they were schooling their kids, which was designed to produce obedient children, obedient soldiers, compliant workers. The Prussians wanted manageable citizens. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's documented history. And the people who imported this monstrosity into America were the politically well-connected, the political elites, the entrepreneurs who were the wealthiest of the wealthiest, and they needed good workers for their factories. And Gatto says that the damage that schools do is not really a bug. It's a feature. The boredom, the dependency, the inability to think critically, the need to be told what to do, that's the product. That's what the system was designed to produce. Those are the kind of people that do really well in a factory and just do one simple little task over and over again on an assembly line. I know that's hard to hear because most of us went through that system. And a lot of us have people that work in that system that we love dearly. The truth is, you can't fix a problem if you're not willing to name it, if you're not willing to point it out. So read the book, and I would recommend reading it before you read anything else on this list. And the reason why is because it gives you the why behind every other book I'm about to recommend to you. Book number 2 is Leadership Education by Oliver DeMille. So now that Gatto has burned the old system to the ground, I wish, DeMille shows us how to replace it. This is the book. For me, this is the book that started everything. And when people ask me, hey, I'm new to homeschooling, what should I read? I always start with this book, actually. Some old couple, my mentors, actually, after years of homeschooling, they handed me this book. They told me my kids needed more freedom. I was punishing. I was just a punishing tyrant of a homeschooling dad. And they said I need to chill out and I need to read the book. And that scared the crap out of me. And that's because I was doing what felt safe and assuring to me as a new homeschooling parent. That was checking off all the boxes, chasing all the state standards, complying with the curriculum. And I basically brought school into my home. I just didn't have the school bus parked in the driveway. I did all that until Oliver DeMille blew that out for me. The first thing is that DeMille points out that kids develop at different rates, but also that there's stages to their development. Early on, you have what's called the core phase, and that's young kids. And these kids, basically, you just need to love them, show them right and wrong, help them do some physical labor, show them how to be good to other people, and make life fun and let them have a lot of unstructured play. And I'm simplifying it, but that's basically it. It's get out of their way. There's not really any room from 0 to 8 years old for the scholarly type work. And then you got the next phase, which is the love of learning phase, where you're still not ramming certain subjects down their throat, but you're structuring time for that kid to start to dive in on a thing. They want to learn about bugs. They want to learn about archaeology or whatever the heck it is. All right, cool. Hey, let's have some fun. Let's do it. And you're the facilitator as a parent. You facilitate these things and you learn about this stuff until they get bored, and then you move on to the next thing. And they love it. And then you get the scholar phase when they hit puberty around 12. And that's where if they've fallen in love with learning and they feel safe, they've been set up for this moment, scholar phase, they're ready to take off and start reading all the cool stuff. And you don't even really have to push them too hard, to be honest. And that just blew me away to think that you could even have something like that. And I thought about that as a child, what that could have been like for me growing up if I had that kind of experience. But I think the key to this book that hit me the hardest, the thing that pierced my heart and made me drop to my knees and just go, holy, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I knew I needed to find a way, was the idea that I needed to inspire my children, not require from them. And DeMille points out that there's really only two ways for a child to get an education. That's to inspire them so that they enthusiastically do it from inside themselves, or you require it, and that looks like the carrot and the stick. But we know the carrot and the stick lead to just short-term gains, and then usually kids forget everything. And when you're requiring it, you get kids who they get really good at compliance, right? What John Taylor Gatto talks about. But when you can inspire it, you get kids who love learning for its own sake. They care about impact. They become leaders. I saw this change my family in more ways than just what it did for my kids, what it did for me, for my kids, all the way extending out into extended family. It's been an amazing ride. Someday I'll talk about just that stuff, but powerful book. I love it, and I couldn't recommend it any higher. And if you only read one book on this list, make it be that book. Book number 3, Hold On to Your Kids by Gordon Neufeld. This one's a little different than the other books because it's not really about homeschooling. It's about something a little deeper. It's about the relationship between you and your child and why that relationship is under attack in ways that you probably don't even perceive. Neufeld is a developmental psychologist, and he argues that children are biologically hardwired to be attached to somebody. They orient toward somebody. What does that mean? It means that they take their cues, their values, and their identity from someone. The question is, who's that going to be? Because there's a little bit of an epidemic going on in our culture these days where kids are spending so much time with their peers, they spend less and less time with their adults in their life. And what happens is the peer group ends up becoming the primary attachment. And kids stop being influenced by the adults in their life, which means they stop being teachable. They stop being reachable. And they start taking their cues and getting their values and their guidance and their identity from their peers. Neufeld calls this peer orientation. And I think it's one of the most important things we should be talking about with our youth these days. But instead, what I hear is, oh my gosh, our kids should go to school. You know why? Because they need to be socialized. In other words, your kids should be spending 8 hours a day with their peers every single day, 5 days a week. It's so good for them. Newfield doesn't necessarily think that's true. And this is why homeschooling done right is such a gift. Why it can be so healing for a family. If you have family dysfunction passed down from generations, homeschooling done right can be such a gift. And it's not because you're protecting them from the world. It's because you're deepening that bond that is the most important bond they could possibly have. It's the one that's the most crucial for their development. Read the book. I promise you, it's a good one. Book number 4 is The Self-Driven Child by William Stixrud. Okay, I want to ask you a question. When was the last time, stop and think about this, when was the last time your kid made a real decision for their own life? Not what they had for lunch, but a real decision for their life. And maybe if they're really young, maybe what they had for lunch or what they wore today, that's as big as it can get. But when was the last time they had that opportunity? Because here's what the research says, as William Stixrud shows in his book. A low sense of control of one's life is one of the most stressful things you can experience. And good Lord, we're raising a generation of kids with basically zero control over their lives. Everything is managed, scheduled, optimized. Everything is supervised. And we wonder why anxiety is through the roof in kids. In the last 10 plus years here, anxiety is just going through the roof. Stixrud and Ned Johnson, they say in the book that your job as a parent is not to just be their boss, their overlord, and dictate everything about their life, but it's to be their consultant in their life. That's where you need to take the relationship. And what does a good consultant do? They ask good questions. They offer good advice and fresh perspectives. Of course, you're still a parent, and every now and then you got to force your kid to do a thing or two. That's true. But you want to be incorporating this consultant role in their life. Let them make decisions. Be a consultant. Book number 5 is Free to Learn by Peter Gray. I'm going to be honest with you. When my kids were young and they were just running around, goofing off, playing in the mud, a lot of times I felt guilty. I felt like I was failing them, that I was like some kind of absentee parent. But Peter Gray cured me of that guilt. And he did it with something that looks pretty scientific to me. Gray is an evolutionary psychologist, and he argues that children are biologically designed to educate themselves through unstructured play. He's seen this in cultures all around the world, hunter-gatherer societies. This is the rhythm. This is how it works. And he gives this really cool analogy where he says, look, lions, when they're cubs, they play fight, because when they're adults, they need to know how to fight. So they play what they need to be able to survive. Gazelle and zebra, they play by running around because they're going to be chased by the lion. They need to know how to survive too, so that's how they play. Kids play by playing house, by being social, by coming up with rules, by playing with dolls and taking on the role of an adult. And they play in these kinds of ways, and they learn how to conflict resolve and deal with things in ways that kids need so that they can best develop their social skills. Because their social skills, that's what they need to be healthy adults. So stop feeling guilty that you're letting your kids goof off out in the backyard without you there. They need it, and you need the book. Book number 6 is way different than all the other books. It's called Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy. I saved this one for last because it's about you. It's not for your kids. It's for you. Every book on this list to this point was about changing how you see education and parenting and homeschooling. And this book is about changing how you see yourself. I genuinely believe you can't become the parent your kids need until you deal with who you think you are. Here's the core idea. Most of us walk around with fixed stories about ourselves. We believe I'm not good enough. I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not the kind of person who does that. I'm not smart enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm too far gone and I can never change. And we treat those stories like they're fact, like they're biology, like they're permanent, like you can't do anything about it. Let's just think for a second what that's teaching your kids. But Hardy says it's a lie. It's not permanent. It's not fixed. It's not even something you discover. Who am I? Oh, let me discover who I am. That's not even really true. who you are and your personality, it's what you create. Think about that for a second. What does that mean for a child? When they watch their mom or their dad create who they want to become. Every single day, through your choices, through your environment, through your goals, you're becoming the person you want to become, or you're reinforcing the person that you believe you are. I grew up believing I was dumb. School confirmed it, grades confirmed it, and I carried that story into my adulthood, into my marriage, into my fatherhood, into my homeschooling experience. And it cost me years that unfortunately I can't really get back. This book, along with a lot of hard work, it helped me rewrite that story. And here's what I know now that I didn't understand back in the day. Your kids are watching you write your story. They're watching you either pick up the hard book to read or turn on the TV. They're watching you pursue something that scares you so you could become a better version of yourself, or they're watching you play it safe and hide. If you want to inspire your kids, be someone worth being inspired by. You can do really well in your homeschool without that ingredient. But my gosh, if you get that part right, it is like throwing gasoline on a fire. It is absolutely insane. It's explosive. So there they are. Those are my 6. And it was really hard to pick 6. I wanted to do so many books. And you know what? That's the thing about it. I love books. There's hardly anything on planet Earth that I'd rather talk about than books. So subscribe, because I'm going to be bringing you all kinds of books on all kinds of different things that most homeschoolers don't really talk about. And so if you're into that kind of stuff and you want to grow and you want to become a better version of yourself, you got to subscribe. You got to be part of what I'm doing. Leave a comment. What's your favorite book? What book have you read that changed your life? What book would you recommend to a new homeschooler? Leave it in the comments. Those are my books. What is your book? The world needs to know what these books are. So there you go. Subscribe, comment, link in the description on my Skool group for fathers, where we can encourage each other and we can grow together. It's brand new. I'm building it. It's not where I want it to be yet. Come on in, join, be part of the cool guys, and I would love to see you on the other side. You all have a wonderful day. Take care.